This morning, experts are warning against a growing super trend that could be costing Aussies over $50,000 in their retirement.
Welcome back. Aussie super accounts are facing fresh risks heading into the new year, with market uncertainty and policy pressure expected to impact our retirement nest egg.
Some breaking news. Let's take you straight to the Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers in Canberra, who is talking about some major changes to superannuation.
It's not the retirement Bill Turner was hoping for.
I thought I'd have a little roof over my own head and enjoying what years I've got left.
In 2023, Bill lost his affordable housing.
The rent of $188 all of a sudden bloomed out to $400 a week.
Tonight, outrageous new claims of cold and callous behaviour by the government department supposed to be helping. Pensioners who reached out for assistance, fearing they won't be able to afford their rising rent, claim they were told to buy a tent.
On the 20th of March this year, with no press conference and no letter addressed to you, the federal government reached into the pension of a retired Australian couple and took about $95 a fortnight out of it. Nearly $2,500 a year. Their savings did not fall. Nothing in their life changed. What changed was a number in a rulebook in Canberra. That is the shape of this. Not a crash, a quiet redrawing of the lines around the money you spent 40 years saving.
Absolutely, and the inflation genie is definitely out of the bottle, and those people on fixed incomes and retirees are hurting the most, and it really is having an impact, I think, on their lives.
You know, when you prepare for your retirement, you go, okay, right, I'm going to need this amount of money. You save for all of that, but then you're not going to take into account that food prices, energy, petrol.
Start with the target, because the target is not a guess, and it is not a slogan. It is published quarterly by the superannuation industry's own peak body, and every fund in the country measures you against it. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia says that to retire at 67 and live what it calls a comfortable life, a single Australian needs $630,000 in super, and a couple needs $730,000. And read what comfortable actually buys. Because it is not a yacht. It is private health cover, a reasonable car, a working air conditioner you are not frightened to turn on, home repairs when the roof leaks, one overseas trip every 7 years. That is the bar. Here is the part that should stop you.
And so we're looking at about $65,000 a year for a couple to have a comfortable retirement, and that's comfortable. That means you have a meal at the club, you can fix your car, you're not having regular holidays all the time, but that's the base level we're looking at, and obviously we had a big spike with inflation.
20%, 1 in 5. Which means the number the entire system holds up as the finish line is a number 4 out of 5 Australians will never see. So what is actually in the account? The tax office publishes it, and the Super Members Council pulled the figures apart this year. For men aged 60 to 64, men on the doorstep of retirement, men with their whole working life already behind them, the median superannuation balance is $236,000. For women in the same age bracket, $174,000. Median means the middle. Median means half of Australian men about to retire have less than $236,000, and half of Australian women have less than $174,000.
Pre-COVID, I would estimate that my grocery bill for the three of us would have been around the $250 mark. It's now up to $400 a fortnight. What happens if I lost my job? That's terrifying to think of.
$630,000 needed, $236,000 held. $394,000. That is the whole. That is the distance between the retirement you were promised when the system was sold to you in 1992 and the retirement the numbers say you are actually walking into. And nobody sent you a letter about it. There was no notification, no statement in the mail with a red line on it saying, you are $394,000 short and you have about 4 years left to fix it. Here is what happens to the people who reach that line with nothing behind them.
It's not the retirement Bill Turner was hoping for.
I thought I'd have a little roof over my own head and enjoy what years I've got left.
In 2023, Bill lost his affordable housing.
The rent of $188 all of a sudden bloomed out to $400 a week.
Bill Turner is not an accident. Bill Turner is what the floor looks like. And you need to know exactly how high that floor sits, because for most Australians, it is the thing that actually catches them. From the 20th of March, the full age pension pays a single Australian $1,200.90 a fortnight. Call it $31,200 a year. A couple on the full pension get $47,070. Now set that against the industry's own comfortable standard, $54,000 a year for a single, $76,500 for a couple. The gap between the pension and comfortable is more than $23,000 a year, every year, for as long as you live. That gap is what your super is supposed to fill. For half the country, it cannot.
Many Australians might be reconsidering their private health insurance after the federal government approved a premium increase of 4.41%. Families with an average-priced gold hospital policy will fork out about $330 extra per year from April.
Private health insurance is not a luxury inside the comfortable standard. It is a line item. It is written into the definition. And this year, the federal government approved a 4.41% increase to it, $330 extra a year for a family on a gold policy, $167 for an individual. That is one line in 1 year out of a budget that is already $23,000 short. And here is what nobody puts on the front page. Retirees do not experience the same inflation you read about in the news.
The Reserve Bank governor saying the longer the war goes on, the bigger the impact on inflation.
With a supply shock occurring, we're in a situation where we already have high inflation. I think there is a risk that inflation expectations may start to move.
The Reserve Bank's headline number for the year to May was 4%. That is the figure that goes on the evening bulletin. But the superannuation body that publishes the retirement standard has been tracking what retirees actually buy, and it does not match. In one recent quarter, the Consumer Price Index rose 1.3%, while the cost of a comfortable retirement rose faster, because the things a retiree cannot avoid moved hardest. Property rates up 6.3%, electricity up 9%. Their own chief executive said it plainly. Retirees are experiencing stronger price pressure than the general population because they spend more of their budget on the essentials that rose the most. Read that again. The published inflation rate is not your inflation rate. Your inflation rate is worse. And it is worse precisely because you are old and because the things you cannot stop buying are the things that went up.
Independence comes at a cost when ageing at home.
That's my shower.
At 72 and largely immobile, Philip Hodge needs hired help to shower, but tough times have meant tough changes to his hygiene routine, now limited to just one shower a week.
Help to shower. That is not a lifestyle choice, and it is not a line you can cut when the budget gets tight. It is a cost that arrives whether the money is there or not, and it arrives at exactly the age when your income has stopped moving forever. This is the part of the arithmetic that people miss when they look at a super balance and think it looks all right. A working person absorbs a price rise by earning more, or working more, or waiting for the next pay review. A retiree cannot do any of those things. The balance is the balance. When the cost of living moves, it does not come out of your income. It comes out of your remaining years.
The charity says 20% of Australian households have either skipped meals or gone full days without eating in the year 2024 to 25. That's a 1% increase on last year, and a sign, Foodbank says, that hunger is becoming mainstream.
Now we come back to the 20th of March and to the $95 a fortnight, because you deserve to know exactly how it was taken. Centrelink does not look at what your savings actually earn. It never has. It uses the rule called deeming. It assumes your money earns a certain rate, and then it taxes your pension against that assumption, whether the money earned it or not. For 5 years, those deeming rates were frozen. Frozen through the pandemic, frozen through the recovery, frozen while the pension quietly did what it was supposed to do. Then, in September last year, the government lifted them for the first time in half a decade. And on the 20th of March this year, it lifted them again. The lower rate to 1.25%, the upper rate to 3.25%. 2 rises in 6 months, after 5 years of nothing. Here is what that does. A part pensioner couple with a normal amount of savings is now deemed to be earning more income than they were in February, even though not a single dollar more has arrived in their account. And because the pension reduces by 50 cents for every dollar of assessed income above the threshold, the assumed money becomes a real cut. One worked example put it at about $95 a fortnight, near enough to $2,500 a year, against a pension rise from indexation of just $33.40 a fortnight for a couple. They gave with one hand, on camera, with a media release. They took more with the other, in a schedule nobody reads. And that is the pattern. Hold on to it, because you are going to see it 3 more times before this is finished. Here is where it gets worse, and it gets worse in a way most Australians have literally never looked at. Your super fund charges you a fee. You know that. What you do not know is the scale of it. In a single year, Australians paid roughly $34 billion in superannuation fees, about 1% of the entire pool, skimmed off the top before you ever see a balance. 1% sounds like nothing. 1% is not nothing. CanStar modelled 2 Australians with identical incomes and identical returns and changed only the fee, 0.75% against 1.5%. The difference at retirement was $92,700. $92,000 gone. Not to a crash, not to a bad market, not to a decision you made, to a percentage in a product disclosure statement you were never going to read. And the fees are not falling. Advice fees deducted straight out of superannuation accounts surged by $1.1 billion in 2 years, with 5 platforms accounting for $815 million of the increase. Retirees pay the most of all, because the fee is a percentage, and after 40 years of contributions, you are the biggest balance in the room. That is the second hand in your pocket. The first was the government. The second is the fund that has your name on the statement. Australians have been moving their super out of shares and property and into cash, watching the news, watching the balance, and pulling the money into what feels safe. It feels like protection. It is the most expensive thing you can do. Because when you switch after a fall, you sell at the bottom. You lock in the loss. You trigger tax and fees on the way out, and then you are sitting in cash when the market comes back. And it comes back without you.
The biggest reason is the market volatility. There's so much uncertainty right now. Our phones are constantly binging with breaking news. So, this is where people are starting to make these decisions based on emotions rather than rational thinking, based around strategic financial goals.
$30,000 to $57,000 destroyed by a decision made in a moment of fear with the television on. But even if you do everything right, you never panic, you never switch, you pay the lowest fee in the country, there is a risk you cannot manage, and it is the one nobody sold you on in 1992. The rules can change. And they just did. On the 1st of July this year, a fortnight ago, a new tax on superannuation earnings came into force. It is called Division 296. Above $3 million in super, earnings now carry an extra 15%. Above $10 million, an extra 25%. Now, I'm going to be straight with you, because the whole point of this channel is that we do not lie to make a number scarier. That tax does not touch you. It touches about 90,000 Australians, fewer than 1 in 200. So why does it matter?
The second change is to introduce 2 thresholds for the better targeted superannuation tax concessions. The first threshold is $3 million. The second threshold is $10 million.
For 30 years, the promise underneath superannuation was that the money was yours. The treatment was settled, and you could plan a 40-year life around it. In 8 months, that promise was rewritten 3 times. Announced one way in 2023, redesigned in October last year, and legislated as something different again. New thresholds, a new rate, a new definition of earnings, a new start date. And it did not stop with the tax. On the same 1st of July, the concessional contributions cap moved. The non-concessional cap moved. Payday super began. 6 changes, one morning. The line was drawn at $3 million this year. It is a line. Lines move. They moved the deeming rate after 5 years of promising they would not. They moved the tax after telling a decade of savers the treatment was settled. The question is not whether the $3 million line will ever reach you. It probably will not. The question is what the existence of a movable line does to a plan you cannot change. Because you are 62, and your working life is over, and you have no second 40 years to run. Now hold everything you have just heard. The whole, the fees, the deeming, the moving line, and add the thing that has changed most and been reported least. You were supposed to arrive at retirement with the house paid off. That was the entire architecture. The pension was set low. The super target was set at $630,000. And both of those numbers assume, explicitly in writing, that you own your home outright. Look at what is actually happening. In 1990, fewer than 1 in 6 homeowners aged 55 to 64 still owed money on the house. Today, it is effectively 1 in 2. And the average balance still owed by that group is now more than $230,000. Read those 2 numbers side by side because they are the whole story. The median super balance of a man about to retire, $236,000. The average mortgage still owed by his age group, $230,000. His entire superannuation, 40 years of it, is roughly the size of the debt on his house. That is not a retirement fund. That is a payout. He can clear the mortgage and retire on the pension with nothing, or he can keep the super and keep the repayments. The system was never designed for a man who has to choose. And if he never bought at all, it stops being hard and becomes something else. 2/3 of Australian retirees who rent privately live in poverty. Not at risk of it, in it. This is what that looks like. Buy a tent. That is the end of the road, and most of you watching are not on it. You own the house. The house is the plan. So let us finish by naming what has been done to the plan, because you are owed that. This was not bad luck. It was not the market. There is no impersonal force in this story. Canberra set the target, $630,000, and then ran a system in which 4 out of 5 Australians never reach it. Canberra froze the deeming rates for 5 years, then lifted them twice in 6 months, and cut a retired couple's pension by $2,500 a year without one of them earning an extra cent. Canberra told a generation the tax treatment of superannuation was settled, then rewrote it 3 times in 8 months, proving the line moves. And the funds took $34 billion in fees in a single year, and charged the largest percentage to the people with the largest balances, to you. Between them, they built a machine that takes a cut on the way in, assumes an income you do not have on the way out, and then points at your house when the hole it made finally shows. $394,000. That is the hole. Nobody wrote you a letter about it, and now you know why. So here is what is actually in your hands, and it is small, and it is not nothing. Find out what your fund charges you, not the return, the fee. One line in a statement most Australians have never opened, and the gap between the cheap end and the expensive end of the market is several years of your retirement. Find out what Centrelink believes you earn, not what you earn, what it deems you earn, because that assumption, not your bank balance, decides your pension. And leave the balance alone when the market falls. That fear costs between $30,000 and $57,000, and it is the only loss in this entire video that you inflict on yourself. We do not give financial advice on this channel, and we are not about to start. We tell you what the numbers say, and the numbers say the retirement described to you in 1992 was priced for a country that no longer exists, and the people who set the price spent this year quietly making it worse. So tell me below, and be specific, because I read them. What is in your super right now, and how many years do you have left to fix it?